Hello and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mio, and this is part of my 29 Days of Magic series where I interview a dope Black woman every single day during Black History Month. And today I am so excited to have Akilah Scharff-Teoh, who's the founder of the Life Force Unit, a really incredible consultancy. She has such an amazing story. I'm so delighted to have her on the show. Take a listen. Hi, Akilah.
Hi, Laura.
How's it going?
Everything's going pretty well. New beginnings.
New beginnings, and new beginnings. So, as the podcast goes, first question, always the same. Answers, always hilarious. I have a high probability that your answer is going to be quite funny, just because I actually know you. So, what was your first job?
Oh, goodness. I was a telemarketer. I think I was about 14, 15 years old. A telemarketer at a company called East Coast Mortgage. Oh my gosh, how can I remember that? That was eons ago. But I used to call people up and try to convince them to like redo their vinyl siding or their roofing or whatever have you. And the company I worked for would finance that work. And I used to have to like dress up in a little, business cash outfit, uh, go to walk to, walk to my local bus stop, take the bus to the next town over. It made me feel very profesh. And yeah, that was the first job that I had. It was really interesting, the hang-ups, the curse outs, and all of that. But
I can't even, girl, you were 14 years old. How did that even happen?
I guess I've always been good at selling myself. I was an articulate kid, and I think I was able to convince people on the phone that I was an adult, a trusted adult, to be selling them home home improvements and refinancing to do so. So I guess in my interview, I gave it gave them a good impression, and I did get a lot of sales. I did make quite a bit of money for a teenager with that job, actually. But the
Wow,
curse, the curse, the curse outs and the hang-ups were pretty intense. Like you had to have a thick skin for that job.
that's a lot to be doing at 14, 15 years old. Damn. But that now again correlates to what you do now, dealing with people and helping them figure out their foolishness. So why am I not surprised?
Yeah, it does make sense. Now that I think about it, it absolutely does make sense. And you have to learn how to be graceful in the face of resistance and conflict. So I guess that totally makes sense.
True indeed. So you go from being a highly successful child telemarketer to where you are now. What has that career journey been like?
Child telemarketer. um, it's been interesting. I wouldn't say that I've had a linear professional path. I've definitely been the type that is interested in a lot of different things, but also really aware of um, trends waning or industries when they're becoming obsolete. And so I say that as somebody who's worked in analog and early digital forms of marketing and software, and worked in telecom, uh, worked in educational publishing, like thinking about all of these industries that have entirely transformed over the course of the past few decades, and ultimately leading back into technology, like the very first like truly corporate company outside of that child telemarketing situation was like a company that did market like multi-channel marketing and also created proprietary software. And so very early in my career, I was working with software engineers, developers, but also copywriters, designers, etc. So it's actually funny how I ended up nearly 15 20 years later working in a space where I was a product manager, product owner for technology products, because essentially it's like you're running a business unit within a company for a product. So you're responsible not only for the aesthetics, but the function and the overall evolution, as well as like the P&L and all of that. So um, after years of working in that space and working on highly specialized areas of technology like machine learning, AI, before it was like really, way before it's like really buzzy like it is now, I decided to take my show on the road, because once you know how to run a once you know how to run a business that's like a $2 million product, you can definitely run your own business.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not.
Makes sense.
It's much harder to own a product in a highly bureaucratic environment than it's much harder to evolve a product in a highly bureaucratic environment than it is to run your own business, because you make the rules in your own business.
Uh-huh. So now that you have like taken the leap into having your own business, what are you doing these days?
Okay, well, I left corporate in 2019, and this is again corporate tech, everything from like smart cities to advertising tech, like uh, entertaining prototypes involving VR and biometrics and things. I took a pivot uh, during the pandemic to work in racial equity, and I think that it was a critical time for me to enter that field, because one of the main reasons why I left corporate tech as a Black woman was because of all of the racism that I experienced on many levels, as being the only Black woman in my department, division, my team, like any way that you could slice it, I was the only Black woman. And also, I was the only person who had information that people didn't, because I was the only one besides like the CEO that had to have oversight on every single aspect of the product, right? So, working in racial equity and facilitating for mostly tech companies, um, that allowed me to be on the outside of the dysfunction, but also help to guide companies to find where the inequity hides, especially in products. And I've since moved away from racial equity in the traditional sense, as I've
Mhm.
learned that the weight one has to bear when trying to like validate um, something that is like by design. Uh, uh, I would say there's like a strong narrative against the existence of inequity in a lot of these spaces. So it's I don't think it's the job of any one, especially Black woman, to do that work personally. I'm more interested in shifting work design and development culture altogether. I think that is a more sustainable path, because if you focus on racial equity unto itself, it's easy to dismiss it. But if you focus on actually shifting the way that we work and the way that we design and we develop, and really take a critical eye to who's in the room, who's making the decisions, how are these narratives being told, what is the true end goal for this product or program, you get closer to removing the inequity in the culture itself, as opposed to just one company or two or five or 10.
Yeah, it's so true. We just had this recently with a event we just did, and it was interesting because, one of the, we are very, obviously our team's super diverse, and our client team is actually very diverse. And, we had a really unique element in this event that we just recently did, that if you did not have a diverse team, there's no way it's getting made.
Right.
And
Right.
it was a huge hit. People loved it. It was surprising. It was delightful. It was culturally relevant because, like, if someone said that you were going to do this, how this could have been a giant cultural faux pas if you didn't understand the culture, it was a landmine. But because we, have a team that's been diverse from inception, not by transfusion, it killed.
Right.
And I think that's the kind of the big difference right now is that when you build teams with equity in mind from day one, it will always yield you far better results.
Right. And it shifts the culture. Like, just consider you work for a huge company right now that is influential in its industry. I'm really interested in like sustainable trends and making waves to shift the culture. One company completely revisiting its standards and not just looking at it as like a DEI campaign or program or whatever, but shifting their standards from the foundation. If you do that and you essentially embody your values as a company, you have the ability to influence millions, right? All you have to do is really plant the seed and stand firm in your values in everything. Let those values translate into everything that you do and how you go about doing them, and you have the ability to set the trend or reset the trend or change the standard altogether.
And why do you think companies are so afraid of doing that? We had this like moment of racial reckoning back in 2020, and now we just had the Super Bowl where there was not one person of color who directed a commercial for Super Bowl.
Mm, mm.
So how quickly we forget. How quickly we forget.
We are no longer in our Lord's year of George Floyd, I guess. But I when I I'm going to answer this question honestly, and it's greed, right? We can't say that any of these companies are lacking in funds, right? A lot of these companies cry broke all the time and say that they don't have the budget, but really it's just that they look at um, changing their standards as a loss, like a potential for loss. And loss is not a standard. The notion of sacrifice or loss is not a standard that we equate with success, but also we need to reframe the perspective that possibly taking a hit for our values does not mean that we're less successful.
What to think? I think their point is that they are like, oh my God, if we are more diverse, then we're going to lose money. I'm like, do you not look at the stats, places,
Right,
people? Like,
right.
what is wrong with y'all?
And also, if you lose folks for doing a good thing, are those the folks that you really want to have in your corner? Or are those the folks that you really want, like, as your consumer base or customer base? Like, if they don't align with your values, are you just willing to take anybody's money? Like, is that what we're doing in 2023?
He's like, oh, I'll just take whatever. I'm like, oh, isn't that precious? Okay, sure.
It just seems like at present there is a lot of hypocrisy. If you look at a lot of the public messages that were sent out in 2020 around um, race, and again, like this is again gonna ruffle some feathers, but DEI is like the marketing, in my opinion, the marketing or the marketer's version of um, truly aligning oneself with the notion that everyone should be at the table. If your customer truly looks like everyone, right? If your customer base, if your fan base truly looks like everyone, but the people designing and developing this product or program for everyone doesn't reflect the population that you're looking to impact, then you're potentially harming them, period. So when I look back at those messages in 2020 and some in 2021 about support and standing by and alignment and all of that, and we're committed. Um, I want to revisit those commitments and say, was that just a commitment for 2020, 2021, or was it a lifetime commitment? Because if you're really looking to truly shift the standard of the way in which business works as it relates to racial inequity, and if you're truly committed um, to addressing the ills in this country that are deeply embedded in the fabric of this country, then it has to be a lifetime commitment. Like this is like a deep spiritual undertaking. This is not just a band-aid we can slap on the problem, and it's going to take all of us.
And it's going to take all of us. And it's not even a game. You know,
Right.
and the way that you've sort of like gone now from corporate to being on your own. Talk to me about a time you had a challenge. You're like, there's no way I'm going to get through this, and then you did.
Um, I think it's happened over the course of this pandemic because I mean, outside of major corporations, like most of us took a hit in one way or another just based on the fact that the pandemic happened, right? Companies shut down, everybody had to regroup, etc., right? There there was like a deep reflection and excavation that had to happen. And though in many ways, even over the course of my corporate career, like unofficially, like coaching women, officially mentoring young people, officially mentoring creative technologists over the course of the past many years, there was still a moment of scarcity where I had to say, look, I could easily go back to corporate, make a lot of money with my eyes closed, and be completely misaligned with my values, create more Zuckerbergs or what have Bezos or what have you, um, and potentially suffer more racial harm as I have in the past in technology. Um, or I could truly embody what I value and make things better for the people coming behind me. Like I'm really interested in not only like forming a league of co-conspirators and shifting the standard of business, but also I'm interested in um, helping to illuminate the possibility for people who look like me that they can completely redraw the blueprint for, whatever has been prescribed for their lives.
Yeah, it is burn up that blueprint, really.
Right.
It's like start from scratch, do whatever you want. I mean, we've joked about this a bunch. Is like, there's so many different things that you were supposed to do. You're taught to you have to be, and it's like no,
Right. I mean, look,
just no.
I'm a child of immigrants, right? First American born on both sides of my family to Jamaican parents. And they grew up in a time pre-technology. They grew up in a time move across the country or maybe to another country for your career. They came up in a time where, now when you think about our parents, like they would stay at a job for 20 years. People are staying at a job for maybe a year, year and a half max, right? The notion of job security is totally different. Like, why are we still applying even old business practices? If our let's say our parents' generation were the ones that were creating all the business standards. If we're not doing work like we used to, why are we still conducting business like we used to? Does that make sense? Like, if we are not operating as employees in the same way, why are the people who are the owners of the standard still doing it the same way? Like, nothing should be the same.
Absolutely nothing. And I think the thing, it's like you have got to see that the world is just different.
Right.
And how you interact with your employees, the creative freedom that you give your employees, the responsibility you give your employees, and when you have your tribe of co-conspirators, whether they're internal or external, how do they help feeding you so that you can be a better person in business? So that's what it all comes down to.
Right. Like burnout should not be in our vernacular. We don't have time for that. We don't we if we know that there's a direct correlation to like stress and let's say cancer, why are we still so deeply mired in a culture that uses like stress and scarcity to drive to make very few people rich? Like, how can we again take a critical eye to the things that drive our very existence and things that drive our processes, our thoughts, things that take up space, that take up mental space, that take up physical space, and say, like, okay, what could be different here? And I guarantee you, nine times out of 10, the root is going to be white supremacy, right? Like, when you think about, like, there are a lot of folks who are anti capitalist and all of that. Um, and speak to that. But I think that the reason why we haven't shifted as much as we can, even though a lot of people know better, is because we're failing to get to the root. And if we look at the root and examine the motives of the root, then we could get to all of the symptoms of it, and then we can stop talking around it. So I'll make a very like easy example to access. Why do billionaires exist? Why does Jeff Bezos, why is he allowed to be a billionaire while people in his warehouses make very little money and suffer very like very physical harmful ramifications of being overworked and overproduction? Like, how is that not a human rights issue? Right? Like, these are the things that keep me up at night. Like, how is this a legal thing that can happen? How,
Yes. Yes.
how, when you
So,
think of, yeah, and when you look at, and I know that this is a business podcast, but again, it's all connected. Like, how are our interactions like with the police, the ones that are like highly documented, how do those come to pass like legally and continue on again and again? Like, it's all connected and the root is the same, right? So I think it's really imperative for anybody that really wants to make a change, and I know that there's only like so much time to get into this, and we're just like at the tip of the iceberg. But I want to compel people to truly learn about the root, to see how it takes root, no pun, in so many aspects of our lives, so we could learn how to be an interruption if we really want to make a difference.
I think, well, you have all the answers.
No, I don't. I don't
I'm
have all the answers.
I'm kidding. I'm so kidding. I'm so kidding. What I think more importantly is that, like, you're saying stuff that makes it's not hard for you or me to understand, but it's like, you have to say it so plainly, and you do it so eloquently. And like, this isn't brain surgery, y'all. It really isn't.
Right.
And if you
Right.
do it well, you make more money. Like, I always, people ask me, like, Laura, well, how is it that you build these really diverse teams and I'm like, because I'm a capitalist.
Right.
I'd like to make money. And I know if I am tied in with the culture, I will make money. So instead of exploiting the culture, I'm going to hire the culture.
Right.
And
Like,
I'm going to get out the
I'm
way.
yeah, I'm very and I'm also interested. I'm interested in so many things, as I said at the beginning. Um I'm interested in finding ways for that, I guess, triple bottom line, so to speak. Um, I'm interested in finding ways for businesses to actually do impactful things, like change their standards in a way that can be impactful while also sustaining themselves. But again, I want to go back to the greed, the greed that's in the room. That's like the elephant in the room, right? If we are operating from a place of scarcity, though we have all of the abundance, then any notion of loss is going to feel like something that we should be in aversion to, right? Like, it feels um, like we won't be able to measure up or keep up with other companies. But we are in an era where these things are very much life or death for people. And I will specifically say Black people, people of color, BIPOC, however you want to slice it. And so when we're thinking about business, we can't say, oh, well, this is just business anymore, because we see the direct effects of capitalism, overproduction, and all the way up the chain, burnout. So you could be wealthy and suffering, or you could be poor and suffering. It is definitely not the same. However, there shouldn't be suffering in the face of so much abundance on any level.
There really shouldn't be. It shouldn't be this hard. My God. Um, Really, it should not be. Thinking about where you are at this particular moment in your life, what do you think you'd tell 18-year-old Akilah?
Mm, hmm, hmm. That is a very good question. And as I've said recently, like, you can pay me any amount of money to go back to my teens, 20s, and beyond. I think I would tell myself that I have the permission to unburden myself from whatever society, my own culture, American culture, my parents, anything that has been prescribed to me about my existence, like what I should be, what I should be doing, how I should show up. Because when I look at younger folks now and how they're way more empowered in speaking about what is and what needs to be changed, I feel like my 18-year-old self feels a little bit like envious, right? And I don't think it's too late. I mean, that's why I'm really outspoken about what is, and the ills that um the ills within business and within society that affect all of us. But I would definitely have started earlier if I could. So I think I would tell my 18-year-old self to, as bold as I thought I was, be bold to the extent that it makes me uncomfortable, because that's what's going to be impactful and that's what's going to create shifts. And also, um, don't accept what is the way it is, because it doesn't have to be that way.
So true. It does not have to be that way. Like, for real.
Right. Right. And for leaders, I mean, this is specifically why I've turned my sights to coaching leaders, because there's this um, self-inflicted helplessness that has been rampant, where folks who are in the highest rungs of power in business, maybe it could be because they're receiving like too many different inputs or too many different motivations, like competing with one another. So then it creates this analysis paralysis. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be a stand for my employees, or I don't know how to speak up on behalf of whatever or whomever. And very, very much committed to, um, again, helping people to give themselves permission to be an interruption, to be the catalyst for change, to learn how to redistribute power, to learn how to uh, bring other voices into the room, to learn how perception of power affects the ways in which um, their employees interact with them, and the ways in which opportunities get missed. Um, just really interested in digging into the humanity of business and the ways in which uh, keeping a finger on the pulse of the humanity in the space can open up a lot of opportunity and create an expansive experience for everyone involved.
I love that. And so accurate. Now, um, you have all this amazing work that you do, and there is a ton of goodness that you walk with every single day. What do you do for Akilah? What do you do for your self-care?
Oh, okay. I make sure that I, get a standard baseline, full physical, blood work, all of that stuff. I'm taking care of my health in the way that I best know how. I eat healthy. I left New York City. I live in nature now. That was vital for my mental health. And I do ceramics in my basement. And I have a year and a half old cat that I play with like every single day. And so there's a lot of laughter and joy in my life by intention and by design.
I love that. I mean, by intentional and by design is the key part about all of this. It's just like, no, this is what I'm gonna do. Period. Full stop. I don't care what anybody else says. I will take this time and do this. Uh,
Right.
it's
Just
necessary.
absolutely. Again, like how we go about our everyday lives, whether it's in our personal lives or in our work, like that is how we can create a wave. Like that's how we can bring people on board. Like how you embody your values and your needs. Like just me taking care of myself and the way that I take care of myself has positively influenced the people in my social circle. And some of those people in my social circle are people that I work with. And so I've coached them on shifting their business culture. And so they've coached others in shifting the way, you know what I'm saying? Like this is a domino effect. Everything is connected, right? So there is possibility that starts with us.
I love this. Fan freaking tastic. You have, because you have to, like for real. Otherwise, what are you gonna do? Like literally, what are you gonna do? Uh,
Right. We can't just be complaining about the same things 20 years from now. Have you ever do you listen to some of the stuff that James Baldwin talked about like decades ago? It's eerily similar to our present reality. Before I leave this earth, I want to know that I really made some intentional decisions to create shifts in my own corner of the world and hope that other people are positively influenced in that. The ideas and the seeds that I plant while I'm here, that they grow into huge trees when I'm not here.
so true. It's what you have to do. It's literally, it's like you leave the world better than how you found it. And you find your own ways to do that, whatever that is for you.
Right, right.
Like that's the
And
key part about it.
right, and just really be um, committed to the notion that we bring people with us. Like the notion of individual success is an antiquated notion. Like the thing that, and this is something that really inspires me about the way that you work, Laura, and the way that you've always worked since I've known you is when you get to a place, you bring people with you. Like there's no like you standing at the top of the mountain looking down at everyone. Like you have always brought people with you from the moment I first met you.
Aww.
And that has been a positive influence on my life for
Aw,
sure.
well, thanks. I know I read recently to, hey, want to make some money really quick? Amazing.
Right. Or even if it's even if it's not directly money, like an opportunity to learn something, an opportunity to gain access to something, like you've always been that way. And something small that might be nothing to you could be huge and cause a trajectory shift for somebody. And I love that.
You know what it is? Well, thank you. And I think for me, I have always tried to like. I just remember when I first started, there was nobody who looked like me that I ever met. And
Right.
then I'll be candid, when I did meet people who looked like me, there was very much the crabs in the barrel situation whereby like,
Right.
oh, I'll have coffee with you, and then you never heard from them again. And I was like, I don't want to be that person. I,
Right.
I don't I don't want to be the person that if I say like hit me up and let's have a coffee or a conversation and I don't follow through, if you go ahead and do it.
Right.
I then or just don't say like or I will say like I'm super busy. No, that's the best way to get a hold of me, Instagram. Because like
Right.
in the evening when I'm like my self care is like I'm scrolling to the internet, I'm watching Julie Mango videos on Instagram, and like if I see your DM, I will probably respond a lot faster than even if you text me. But I think it's really important that like when you're in different rooms and you get different opportunities to let people who are in who folks had no idea even existed. And even if it's like, hey, come to this event or come to this talk or here's this opportunity that they don't even know you exist. But
Right.
I know like if you are in the room, it's gonna open up so many doors for you and for them. So like you all get together and then just go run along. Like and let me get out of the way.
Right.
I wish more people did that. 'Cause I think that would solve a lot. I think similarly, the equity conversation would also work a lot better if that happened as well, where it's like you don't let people feel like, oh, well, this is for me, and I don't want to share that. And I'm like, you're awesome by yourself. It's like if they found
Right.
you once, they'll find you again. Like, no one's going to forget that. I am consistently amazed by some people who kind of come back into my universe who I met a million and one years ago in the most randomly delightful ways. Where I'm like, oh my gosh, really? Oh
Right.
great,
Right.
sure. And
Right.
I think if you have that wonderful, I will never forget how when we reconnected, and then like it was like right before the pandemic, and then it was like, okay, we have this amazing group chat, and
Right.
and it's like, but if you keep those doors open, if you allow people to like come into your universe and not see it as a threat, but see it as a benefit.
Right.
And I think that oftentimes what ends up happening is that like if you take people's humanity as an opening for a conversation of mutual respect and being authentic, you'll get there. But if everything is like mine, I don't want to share. I can't learn anything from you, or you're a threat to me because you're gonna be smarter than me, and if you go in the room with me, I'm gonna look down. Like, y'all would be good. Everybody would be good. Um,
Right.
but it's my hope for the world is that folks just can try and be as chill and kind as possible, and that will also help immensely.
I hope so. I mean, I hope that when we are, sitting in our rocking chairs or whatever, probably, I mean, knowing us, we'll probably be like vacationing on some tropical island when we're retired. But um, when we are looking at the world and the way um, that business unfolds or transforms, that we see more human centered design in every aspect of it. I mean, that's my hope. And look, I come from an innovation background, right? There has to be like a modicum of you know, uh I guess delusion or unrealistic thinking because that's
Mhm.
how things that don't exist get made, right?
Magical
There has
thinking
to
is
be some,
necessary. Magical
right,
thinking is necessary.
yeah, there has to be somebody in the room where saying something where you're like, that's wild and that's never gonna happen in order for the thing to get made. Right. There has to be somebody in the room or else we just keep regurgitating the same thing over and over again and building and designing the same thing. So I say that as, as it like because I'm making it my right to delusional thinking, for lack of a better term, right? My delusion, and it that I hope will make a reality, is that racial inequity won't even be in our vernacular in the sense that we've systemically addressed it, we've intentionally addressed it, we've addressed it on all the levels by the time that we are, old and retired, because this is something that is holding everybody back. It's holding everybody back. It's not just holding um, the folks who are directly affected by it, it's holding society as a whole back. So my my hope is that when we dig into humanity and center the folks most affected, that we all as humans can do better. And that involves like the environment, that involves like everything.
Everything. And that kind of then now goes into my last question. Would you have a give or an ask of the audience?
Hmm. A give or an ask of the audience.
So that can be anything from like, here's a great book, here's some advice, here's my wish for you all. Here's some things I think you should do is be, more mindful of self-care. Anything you want.
Okay. I would say this. Examine your assumptions when you're interacting with other people. Like, take a moment when you're interacting with somebody new, it could be somebody very different from you. Take a step back and look at your thoughts, look at what's happening in your body, look at your body language, look at your desire to dominate, look at all of that. Just take a step back, take a beat, and look at all of that before you make any decisions about what the person is about, what they can do, what they can't do, what they might do. Just take a beat. Just look at yourself, your thoughts, your intentions, your motives, and then act and see if your first reaction is in alignment with your values truly.
I love
That's
that.
really
Yeah.
that's my wish for everybody. I swear, if people would just take a beat
Mm-hmm.
and maybe, I don't know, maybe it's like therapy or whatever. I don't know. I encourage everyone to get therapy as well. But you know, therapy, especially cognitive behavioral therapy, lets you look at the way you perceive something and what's actually happening as two separate things that happen,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Comes in very handy.
Right. So when you look at it that way, you humanize yourself in the sense that you can feel however you want to feel in the moment, but that does not necessarily mean that you have to react as a result of like how you feel in that moment. You can make different choices, right? So that's the thing that comes up in like power dynamics, right? That's the thing that comes up to your point about like being threatened by somebody that you don't know or understand or might be different from you, right? Like that comes up with like the desire to pull rank or talk over somebody in a meeting just because you're not coming from the same place and you don't necessarily understand where they're coming from. That comes up in the desire to always look good or be right, right? Like these are all very human aspects that show up in business every day. So that's my ask. Take a beat.
I love it. And you're so right. Just everything is just like breathe for 2 seconds before you tear someone's head off. Just chill.
Right.
It'll make life a lot easier for you at the end of the day. Oh, we could keep chatting forever, my darling. But thank you so much for finally doing the podcast. I've only been trying to get you this out of for like 5 years.
I
But
was
I'm so
marinating.
I know you came with the truth. You came to spit the facts. But no, I am so I adore you. I'm so grateful for you to share like you're just a beautiful perspective on what equity actually means in the real world. And it's, I was so looking forward to this conversation as part of 29 Days of Magic because I think it centers a lot of what I'm saying. And part of the reason why I'm doing this every year now is because like we have to sort of articulate what it is the problem is and how
Right.
we can fix it. And it is not brain surgery. So
Seriously not.
it really is not. And you have a wonderful way of expressing it and articulating it. So thank you so much for being on the podcast, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And again, please keep up the good work. I love, love, love what you're doing. And you are truly an example of how to be embodied in your values.
Oh, thanks, girl. So I'll put those in the show notes for you guys to find more about Life Force Unit. Hire this woman if you are a big company and need to solve these problems and pay her what she's worth, because she's fantastic. And that is our show.